Welcome to Voices and Visionaries, the new podcast featuring the female forces in sports media. I'm your host, Kelly Burke, and joining me on the inaugural podcast is sports broadcasting pioneer, radio host, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and golf enthusiast, Ann Liguori. Ann, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kelly. I'm honored to be your first guest.
I'm so honored to have you. It only seemed fitting, being that you are my longtime mentor, that you should be the first.
Well, I'm very proud of you. You're like a little sister to me. And, it's been so satisfying for me to watch your career, just grow and blossom and more importantly, to see the wonderful, beautiful person that you are inside and out. So
thank you so much.
That's my honor.
It means so much to me. And you've carved out a niche, really, particularly in the world of golf. When you were first starting out, though, what did you hope you would be doing?
I had no idea if there were going to be any opportunities and what they would be. But I always wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I was more of a generalist when I first started out. I covered everything. And, I went to University of South Florida in Tampa and earned a fellowship from the International Radio and TV Society, the same one that you earned years later.
Yeah.
And that program was incredible. So it put me right in the middle of Manhattan, and we got to meet with the movers and shakers in the business. And I just remember going to a meeting at CBS Sports and sitting in their conference room and watching everything that CBS Sports covered, from the Masters to the Super Bowl, and just all these incredible events. And I just realized right then, and it was this, I had graduated from USF, and it was a great, a tough summer because my brother had just passed away, and I was dealing with that. He was only 22, but it was the summer of '82, and I just remember being in that CBS conference room and thinking, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to cover these events. I was always a tennis and golf enthusiast. But having said that, it took a long time to get into a position where I could cover the sports that I wanted to cover. And so I got a job at CBS Sports, then ABC Radio Network. I broke in on air at the Olympics back in '84, covering tennis, which was a demonstration sport. A woman who was producing at the time needed somebody to cover tennis, and she knew I knew tennis and played tennis. And so she sent me to the tennis Poly Pavilion to cover tennis, and that's when I made my on-air break. And I got the bug. As soon as I had the opportunity to do that, I came back to New York City and started covering every team in New York. Baseball, Mets, Yankees, football, Jets, Giants, hockey. So I was a stringer for every professional team and college team in the New York metropolitan area. So I loved every minute of it. I covered everything.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the CBS Sports and the ABC Sports Radio Network, because I wanted young broadcasters in particular to realize what all you did early in your career. You were an assistant at CBS Sports. You were a freelance statistician for HBO. You then proceeded to be a freelance writer for USA Today Sports, and then moved on to ABC Sports Radio Network as a freelance producer. What were some of your early experiences as a woman in sports media?
I ended up going independent at a very early stage in my career because there weren't opportunities for women back then. CBS Sports, I was lucky to get a per diem assignment. I wasn't full-time. And Phyllis George, may she rest in peace, she was co-hosting with Brent Musburger, the NFL Today show back then. So at least I could see, well, Phyllis George, she was hosting shows. There are a few women, really not that many, maybe one or two, and other markets who are hosting sports. But I learned quickly that I couldn't stay at the network as a producer, or not even a producer, an assistant in production, and break into on air. So much to everybody's dismay, all the movers and shakers with the IRTS program thought I was crazy, the International Radio and TV Society program that brought us up on that fellowship. And I basically left CBS and started freelancing. And my intention was to get as much experience as I could, whether it was being a statistician at Wimbledon, the US Open, whether it was covering an Ohio State, Michigan college football game as, a runner or a liaison between the studio and the field. I just got as many production jobs and statistician jobs as I could while working on my on-air delivery. And then, as I said, I got that break at ABC Radio Sports during the '84 Olympics to go and cover tennis. And, that was all over the world. Armed Force Radio Network was listening, and there were hundreds of ABC affiliates, so that was a pretty big break for my first time. But I was confident I knew enough about tennis to do a great job. And there were a lot of doors shut in my face. And I always had a very positive attitude. I'm always very optimistic. So I always found ways to kind of, navigate the obstacles. And, but it was difficult, Kelly. It was very, very difficult. I was living in New York City. It was the most expensive city, you know, in the country. And I was trying to pay my rent and, you know, trying to, I remember going to the ATM, I'd take $20 out and it would have to last me the whole week. Yeah, but I was able to go to a lot of great lunches. The 21 Club for press conferences. You know, I was able to do a lot, you know, enjoy a lot of great experiences while covering sports on a very low income. And, you know, my mom would send me, you know, a couple bucks and thought it was a lot of money and it would last for 3 days. So, you know, there weren't that many opportunities for women back then. And I think young women today don't know enough about perhaps those obstacles and those, which is a good thing, right? There's more opportunities now for women, but you know, it was hard back then because there weren't all these cable networks and digital platforms. And, you know, basically when I first started, there were 5 big networks. You know, Fox had just joined the fray. And ESPN was on, had been on a couple years before I got started. And that was about it. So I basically, in addition to doing radio, also became a correspondent, a sports correspondent for USA Today. And so I could earn income going to these press conferences, going to cover these games, coming up with stories for USA Today sports section, in addition to working, you know, getting paid to be the reporter for ABC at these games. So I was trying to make money every which way I could just to afford to live in this city. And so I became an entrepreneur very, very early in my life because I realized that if I could bring in sponsorship dollars and create programming that I could, you know, basically do really well. And so I put my business hat on and figured it out, and I've been doing it ever since.
Why do you think the freelance path has been so fruitful for you all these years? There's so many people, so many of our colleagues work for corporations and major networks, and I find it so unique and refreshing that you've been able to build this huge career and do it all on your own.
Quite frankly, I don't believe that I could be doing what I'm doing, you know, obviously the extent of what I'm doing, you know, now and even, you know, 20, 25 years ago, if I wasn't independent. It's not easy. I think it takes a certain entrepreneurial spirit and a lot of creativity and a dedication and a work ethic and a commitment. But I mean, some people thrive in the corporate environment and are promoted and get to a level that they, are driven to. But a lot of people don't get to that, aren't able to climb that ladder. There are a lot of politics, or there's discrimination, or whatever the issues may be. So I think a lot more people are independent now, Kelly, in the media business, because you have to be. I don't think, if you're a journalist, unfortunately, with newspapers closing and, all these other media properties don't really want to pay a lot. Yeah. So I think a lot of people are forced now to do a variety of things, and not because they want to, but because they have to survive.
Yeah. Well, and even a place like the Athletic, who has sort of veered off differently from newspapers, they just laid off 46 people earlier this week. And they were a company that on paper was supposedly doing really well.
Exactly. And that's what's happening. We're going to see that happening, unfortunately, more and more because of the pandemic, and, advertisers haven't been able to commit to these publications, to these radio stations, to these TV stations. So unfortunately, I don't think it's going to get much better. I think somebody who has a lot of knowledge about a variety of technology, and has a lot of variety of skills in our business is going to do much better.
And where do you think you got your entrepreneurial spirit from?
I was always a self-initiator. I can remember when I was a kid, I entered my own tennis tournament. And my parents were so supportive. They would drive me, to play tennis at these tournaments all over the Cleveland area and all over the Midwest. But I basically organized it myself. My parents didn't know anything about, tennis and the tournament structure and, the Northeastern Ohio Tennis Association, whatever it was back then. I mean, and when, I've always had to create my own opportunities, Kelly. I mean, when I was in high school, we did not have, junior high, excuse me, we did not have teams for girls. Mm-hmm. When I was 7th and 8th grader, there were no girls sports teams except maybe cheerleading.
Wow.
That's devastating for somebody like you and somebody like me who, are athletic, and that's all I did was sports when I was a kid. I was the first one picked, when the whole neighborhood, which were mostly boys, would go in our they'd convene in our backyard every day for football games and baseball games and kickball games, and I could run faster than them. And so they knew that, and there was like no gender bias back then, you know. They would pick me to be on their team because I was, you know, the fastest runner or the better athlete. And when I was in high school, we did not have a girls tennis team. I played on the boys tennis team, and I would play #1 singles on the boys tennis team when I was a senior. So I always had to create these opportunities for myself, and I feel like I've always been kind of maneuvering around the obstacles and creating my own opportunities because I had to.
You feel like you still sort of have a chip on your shoulder?
I don't think it's a chip on my shoulder. I just think it was the only way that I could do what I really was passionate about doing, and nobody was going to stop me. So I found a way to make it work. And you know, I just think people who dream big can if they work hard enough and they're creative enough, and if they have a good imagination, they can figure out a way to realize their goals.
It's a great attitude to have.
I think a lot of people would have been discouraged along the way. I mean, even now, there are things that happen, you know, day to day or week to week that are very discouraging. You know, and I find ways to you know, kind of get around those negative things. Everybody has, you know, issues. I mean, not every career is perfect, right? I mean, everybody has dreams and goals, and you know, it's just a matter of figuring out how to get there. But you need support from other people.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have support from other people, then you have to figure out another way to go. And you know, you know, it's sad to say there's still it's still hard, I think, you know, for women in today's world. I think everybody has issues, so we all figure out how to stay positive and to you know, basically, you know, knock down the barriers.
Sports Interview with Ann Liguori is the longest running cable sports show owned, hosted, and produced by a woman. How did you have the foresight at such a young age to own the rights to your own content?
I always had a dream to interview, you know, the most iconic personalities in sports. It was something that I had to go out and bring in my own sponsors to get the show on the air. MSG Network in New York, their programming department, a woman, which I was thrilled that there was a woman who worked in programming back then. this was in the late 80s. She, we talked, and I told her that I'd love to host a show, and where I interviewed all these incredible personalities in sports. And she said, Ann, we love your work. We can give you a time slot every week for this show, but we can't pay you. So I basically figured out a way to make it happen. And I went out with no prior experience or knowledge, and I brought in Volvo as my very first sponsor. Then Sharp Electronics was my sponsor for a good 13, 14 years. The show aired for 17 plus years. And Sports Interview was just this incredible, opportunity to talk to everybody, from Mickey Mantle was my first guest back in 1989. I'll never forget it. We were at Mickey Mantle's restaurant, and he was such a gentleman. He told great stories. He teared up when he was talking about Roger Maris and his friendship with Roger, and about his family history with Hodgkin's disease. And I just got, it was such a great feeling to sit down with these personalities, and they all wanted to talk. I didn't pay anybody. They all were great storytellers. I got them, most of them later in their careers. And so this was about 6 years before Mickey passed away. But, Ted Williams, Wilt Chamberlain, Hank Aaron, Jim Brown, Sam Snead. Oh man, I mean, over 500 of these iconic personalities: Brett Favre, Wayne Gretzky, Billie Jean King, Annika Sorenstam. So it was a great opportunity, but again, the reason it aired and it won so many awards and it aired for so long was because I kept it going, and that was the only way to keep it going, is to bring in the sponsorship. So, in our business, it's all about the money, right? So I brought in the sponsorships, and that was hard. I mean, I was bringing in the sponsorships, booking my guests, distributing it to all these regional cable networks around the country, hosting the show, researching the show, editing the show. I don't know where my 30s and 40s went, Kelly. So, and I'm only 21, so imagine that. Anyway, it was just a great experience, and so I've always kind of been a self-motivator, and I made it happen, by going out and connecting with these sponsors who are interested in the show. And there you have it. It happened. So again, I mean, I was presented an obstacle but an opportunity, and I made it work. So great memories.
How did selling your your own advertising turn you into the businesswoman that you are now?
Well, I mean, I learned a lot on the fly. Pounding down doors on Madison Avenue, where all the advertising executives were and still are, and a lot of these guys who were, I don't think I talked to one, well, I did actually, one key woman in advertising was very helpful, Loretta Volpe with Sharp Electronics. And we're friends. She's a dear friend of mine to this day. But most of them were men and looked at me like I had three heads. You know, wait a second, you want to host a sports show? And you're trying to get, you're also selling advertising and the sponsorships? Back then, it wasn't done. It was rare for a woman to host a sports show, let alone, you know, host it and bring in the sponsorship dollars and the finances for it. So, yeah, I learned a lot, and I'm always learning, right? I mean, we're always learning every day, which is the beauty of life. You have to keep learning by doing and reading and experiencing things, and good and bad. I mean, for every one sponsor that would come on board, you know, 20 would slam the door in my face. So, I mean, you also had to have this incredible resilience and determination to make it happen, because, you know, it was hard to get that one company to commit, right? But once they did, they loved the show, and they normally would stick with me, and they were very dedicated and loyal to me. So that was good.
And you've had so many firsts in your career. You know, first woman to host a call-in sports talk show on WFAN, one of the originals on the Golf Channel, to name a few. What first are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of the sports interview show that we just talked about, because I basically had to put the whole thing together on my own, the cable show, and I own the library. By the way, the smartest thing I ever did was maintain the rights to that archives, which is over 500 half-hour shows, and it's a real treasure chest of content. But I'm very proud of WFAN and being the first woman to host a sports talk show, and I apologize for that audio sound that's going off every time I get an email on this computer. So, but yeah, Susan Waldman was the first voice on WFAN. She was an update person back then, and that was a Wednesday. And then on the Saturday, July 4th, 1987, I hosted, I was the first female to host a call-in sports show, and that show lasted for over 25 years, every week. The times changed throughout the almost 3 decades where I hosted that show, but it was normally a weekend show. Again, we weren't full-time. We started out being full-time, but in the early days, they hired too many people and said they were overpaying too many people, so they fired 20 people. And Susan and I were among the 20 or so people that were fired in the early days of WFAN, but we both were able to hang on to, some kind of work there. And I was able to keep doing my show, but then I was only paid to do, the 3-4 hour show, or it's a long time. It was a 5-hour call-in show. So again, I mean, I was hosting this high profile show. Hey, Liguori, what's the story? On the #1 sports radio station in the country, but we weren't full time. And Susan obviously, created a great career for herself.
Yeah.
And, she continues to be the Yankees commentator. But back then, it was tough because, we had, first of all, when they first hired us, we were so excited. It was full time and the money was decent. And then about a year into it, they fired so many people, including us, and we kind of had to make our way. So, once I became part-time at WFAN, that's when I started my own production company, Liguori Productions. And that's when I created the sports interview show, because again, I had to, figure out a way to pay the rent.
I didn't realize until yesterday, honestly, that your first TV interview was with Mickey Mantle. Who were a few of your favorite athletes and celebrities to interview?
Well, Mickey was great, obviously great storyteller, and he was the first. And I can still picture that interview like it was yesterday. I was a brunette back then, by the way. I love Jim Brown. Jim Brown is so opinionated, and he's just such an intimidating presence. And we interviewed him at East River Tennis Club, which is no longer there, but it was on the other side of East River, and behind our Jim Brown was the Queensboro Bridge, this massive steel structure. And it was so appropriate for, this intimidating big guy, Jim Brown, who just had so many opinions on so many issues, and a huge civil rights activist, by the way. And I've interviewed and got to know Jim. He's probably been on the show a number of times, and then I also had him on my show on the Golf Channel, and I've had him on my radio show, WFAN, several times. He's so, obviously a great interview. So that was a very memorable interview. But all of them, I mean, I have stories about every interview. I really do. I need to get somebody to help me write a book about all these stories, because there's so many stories behind the stories, right?
Yeah.
So, Mickey Mantle, Ted Williams, what a genius in baseball. And the fact that I could sit down with Ted Williams, at the Four Seasons in Boston, the day he went out in that golf cart, during the All-Star game in the late 90s and waved everybody, and he was, not well. He was quite old at the time, but his son, John Henry, who's no longer with us, John Henry passed away a couple years after, his dad passed away. But John Henry was responsible for getting me that interview. And I mean, that's a treasure because, Ted Williams, he was a war hero. He took off time during World War II, and he was a co-pilot for a wingman for John Glenn. The astronaut. Yeah. And he also flew in the Korean War. So he left Major League Baseball twice for a number of years to go and be, in the war. Yeah. And to fight for our country. And he became a very knowledgeable aviator. And yet came back and won the Triple Crown, just like nothing, like he never left. So, I mean, so many great stories to tell. And, I love history. I'm a big history buff. And I just think, young people really need to hear these stories and, to learn about some of these incredible sports legends and historical figures of our time, because they could learn a lot, and it gives you a lot of context as well.
My mom always credits my interview skills for the summer that I spent living and working with you. What do you think makes you such an engaging interviewer?
I think listening. You have to be a good listener. You cannot want to steal the show, and you really, people want to hear your guests. They're not really there to hear you, although it's nice when they say they love to hear me, but you have to really listen. I think also you have to be very prepared. I know you do your homework and you do your research, and I hope you learned that from me. You have to be so overly prepared for anybody that you're talking to. And then once they know that you really know what you're talking about, they're impressed and they're like, wow, she knows more about me than I know about myself. Then they're willing, then you make them relax, and you're friendly, and you're not there to, malign them or exploit them. You're there to, just have a revealing conversation. You want them to tell you things that they perhaps haven't shared with other people, right? And to be very honest, I had a really interesting conversation on WFAN recently on my Talking Golf show with Alex Lifeson, the co-founder legendary guitarist of Rush. And I couldn't believe in a little bit of time, like 15 minutes, how much he shared with me. He's a passionate golfer. That's why he was on the show. But Rush fans went crazy. The link to the show, I was quoted in dozens and dozens of newspapers all over. He was quoted, really, all over the world. And, I think he just felt very comfortable. People feel comfortable with me. And, you just have to make them feel comfortable, and you're friendly, and you do your homework, and then you listen, and and you don't literally look at your notes. I mean, you take notes and you know what you want to ask somebody, but you really have to, the conversation has to be flowing. You can't just, not hear their answer and then go to a totally different question. You just have to keep it flowing and be natural, and really listen and follow up. Make your follow-up questions really, about what they had just said. If you have if you want them to get more into, specifics. And then to me, the best answers and the more in depth you can go is when you let that person take a breath and wait and pause and give that person an opportunity to continue talking. That's when you get your best material, normally. So I'm glad your mother thinks you learned you did learn a lot that summer.
I'm glad you brought up the preparation too, because I distinctly remember at one point in the summer I was having a little too much fun in the Hamptons, and I remember you really pounding into me like, you got to be doing research. I mean, I did. I learned a ton from you. I owe you a lot.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's all about the preparation and all about listening. Really, those are the keys to a really good interview. And making your guests feel comfortable enough to share sides of them seldom seen.
One of the reasons I really admire you is that you have throughout your career reinvented yourself and adapted to changing times. Why do you think that flexibility has served you so well?
Well, I think you have to do it. People who can't adapt can't continue their careers in this business. And again, being independent, I had to find ways, different clients and different sponsors and different sources to keep my passion going for broadcasting and interviewing and producing and covering the sports that that I love to cover. So it's just really following your passion, following your dream. And what I have found is that you get to a certain age and there is age discrimination. You can ask other people in our business when their careers, other women, their careers were cut short once they reached a certain point. I just think, being independent, you just find ways to continue the income sources, and I become a consultant. I continue my on-air work, which is great, but I also have become a consultant for a variety of companies, and lending my media and marketing and PR experiences, and strategizing with brands, and getting various companies into the golf business. And so I just think, I don't know if it's reinventing yourself as much as it's kind of broadening your experiences and sharing your expertise and your knowledge and your wisdom with different companies. So I think you learn as you get older that there's so many more things you can do in our industry to help people. And that's worth something. So
you're a brand ambassador for Peak Vision sunglasses. You have collaborated on a jewelry line, the Hampton Ropes collection with Dune Jewelry. And you also have an apparel endorsement with Movet's. And yeah, you just showed.
Can you see the jewelry? Dune Jewelry. It's the Hampton's Rope collection. This is sand from your favorite beach or golf course. So it's all very personalized. Sand's very different. I didn't realize how unique sand is from all over the world until I got into this business. But yeah, it's called the Hampton's Rope collection. And you can see it's has a nautical theme. And, there's cufflinks for guys, and it comes in gold now. They've expanded the collection. So, if you go to Dune jewelry.com and go to collections and go to Hampton's Rope collection, you'll see, and you can send in sand from any place in the world that's special to you, or you can go to their sand bank and choose from the 5,000 beaches that they have sand from. So it's a great idea. So they came to me and asked me if I could create a line for them, and because I live in the Hamptons in West Hampton, I thought, what a great idea. Let's call it the Hamptons Rope collection. I got the USGA involved. Torrey Pines, which is hosting the US Open next year, has sent pine from Torrey Pines, and they're making ball markers. So they do ball markers, they do line stoppers, divot tools. And then Peak Vision, I have them here. It's like H.E.R and tell. Peak Vision sunglasses, I feel, are the best sunglasses on the market, and it's the only sunglasses I wear. And they, basically have a dual zone lens technology. So when you're playing golf, you don't have to take them off when you're looking at, on the green, looking at putts. And, it's great for contrast and reading greens, looking at the contours of the fairway. And I just love the glasses. So I'm a brand ambassador for Peak Vision. And then my clothing line is Movettes. You can see this shirt. This is wonderful because it offers SPF 50 sun protection. And it's, it has jouer on it. It's kind of fun, meaning to play in French. And they have performance collection and a fashion collection. And I just think that the clothes are very sophisticated, and you can play golf and then keep them on and go to dinner. So the versatility of the collection is very cool. So it's movettes.com. So, it keeps me busy, Kelly. I love all these. I don't represent any products that I don't 100% believe in and use myself. So
why do you think you've been so successful in leveraging your sports work now into brand partnerships with the companies you just mentioned, and I'm sure there'll be others?
Well, I think people trust my opinion. People trust my the credibility. That's something that it takes years and years to build, and your reputation. And again, I'm an influencer in broadcasting and social media, and so it's been fun. It's been fun because I believe in these products, and I think I represent the brands well. They enjoy the fact that I can actually help each company strategize to get into the golf business or get into the sports business. So I offer more than, just wearing the jewelry or the clothes or the sunglasses. I can actually offer them a lot more in terms of being a consultant for a lot of these brands. And so I obviously have my favorites, and those are the companies that I choose to work for. So it's these opportunities are opportunities that I love, and I love, I'm a businesswoman, so it's, look, if I was just doing one thing, I think I couldn't just do one thing. Interviewing people is great, but I love the variety. Variety is the spice of life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just so much fun.
We're taping this in early June. Normally this month you would be covering the U.S. Open, the PGA Championship. You'd be hosting your annual golf tournament, your charity golf.
That's right.
Out in the Hamptons. Obviously, things have changed because of COVID. So how have you had to pivot what you are normally doing during this time of this pandemic?
Like anybody, it's very uncertain times, and very disturbing times, and but we keep going. We find ways to keep going. And have I had some accounts that said they can't pay me. Yes, which is, very sad. But you go with the flow, and you try to find ways to not only survive but thrive. And so, yeah, I mean, the golf schedule is very different. We have the PJ Championship in August now, which would have been, behind us in May. We have the U.S. Open at Winged Foot in September. The U.S. Open tennis. Will they have spectators? We don't even know. That's end of August, early September. And then the Masters in November. So, you have to be flexible. What can you say? I think everybody's in the same position. We're just trying to stay safe, and stay active, and stay peaceful. Those are my 4 stays.
You mentioned the Masters. I believe it'll be your 22nd straight Masters. In November. What's your favorite part about covering that tournament?
Well, the Masters is just a magical place. It's just so pristine and so beautiful, and they treat the media so well. We're in a $60 million media building, and everything they do is to perfection. They keep the course flawless. They just, if you have a request, I remember years ago when we were in the older press building, I always sit on the upper level on the left-hand side, and they had, the scoreboard and a huge monitor in the front. It was like this big amphitheater, but I was going on the air every 20 minutes, and I couldn't really see that well. So I just asked Glenn Greenspan, who used to be the PR guy back then, and then he became Tiger's PR person. I asked him back then, I said, listen, is there any way you could put a monitor closer to Radio Row? And the very next day, there was a TV monitor right there to the right of me, and everybody on Radio Row could see it. Wow. And just the very next day, they had to put in. So, I mean, just little things like that. They really, get things done. And it's just such a great event. And the players, it's such a prestigious title to win. And so every year there's a magical story. Every year. Of course, last year with Tiger winning his 5th green jacket, years after his last major title. So there are always magical stories there, and it's just an incredible place. So,
what are the top 3 golf courses you've ever played?
Wow. I mean, I play golf all over the world, but I would say my favorite courses are in Ireland. I'm a member of Doonbeg on the West Coast. You go up to Donegal and you'll see some incredible courses up there. Just when you think you've been on the most beautiful golf course in the world, you go a half hour down the road and play another one, and it's just breathtaking. Most of them are links courses on the ocean with incredible views. The people there are so hospitable, and the people really help make the experience. So I would say my top 3 courses in the world would probably be all in Ireland. And it's really hard to say 3 of them, but courses like Inniscrone or Ballyliffin or Royal Portrush or Doonbeg, as I mentioned, Lahinge. There's so many. Now, on Long Island, where I live, we have so many great golf courses. Shinnecock, Fisher's Island. I love Fisher's Island. So that would be in my top, probably 5, Fisher's Island. Obviously, Maidstone, where my event's going to be October 8th. Our 22nd annual Liguori Foundation Charity Golf Classic to benefit cancer research. Maidstone's a special place. Friar's Head, so there are so many great golf courses, and I've been playing and doing TV shows on so many of these courses for so many years. It would really be hard to tell you just 3, but the majority of them, I would say, are links courses in Ireland.
Okay. The match that was played between Tiger and Peyton versus Phil and Brady a couple weeks ago ended up being the highest rated golf broadcast in history.
On cable.
Yeah,
yes.
On cable. How does the PGA Tour continue to capitalize on the momentum from that broadcast?
Well, interestingly enough, CBS now is going to mic some of the players who will allow that, because it's very tough to be mic'd. It's kind of distracting when you're playing for money at these tournaments. But yeah, no, the match 2 was amazing. It was everything right about a production. It was so much fun. It would be really hard to duplicate that in actually a PGA Tour event because of the pressure and the money and all that stuff. But they are going to, CBS is going to try to get, very inventive and try some new things. So hopefully they will, because everybody's going to be watching these golf tournaments, because golf seems to be leading the way back, on live television, and rightly so, because of the social distancing aspect of the golf sport itself. So I think they are going to come up with fun ways. And whoever, if these guys will agree to be mic'd, and they won't be able to say as much as they said during the match, but I think that interactiveness, and I also liked the way that studio hosts during the match could ask questions of the golfers. Now that's not going to happen during the televised event, but I wish it would. Because that would be a lot of fun.
Your foundation, the Liguori Foundation, is the title sponsor for the Awesome Champions Mentorship Program. You've obviously been my longtime mentor. Why is mentorship so important to you?
It's everything, honestly. When I was just starting out, there weren't that many women in broadcasting sports who I could really go to ask a question or get advice, and it was really lonely. And it can still be lonely, when you're independent, and there are not that many women doing exactly what you're doing, but I feel like I'm still paving the way, so that's kind of lonely territory. But mentorship is everything. I really believe in helping young people, women and men, and so we put this scholarship together, this mentorship together, the Champions program, and it just seems like the association has so many incredibly intelligent and wonderful women who are pursuing careers in sports media. So that's always very exciting for me to see. And then I do another program, the Liguori Foundation Sports Media Scholarship for the New York chapter of Women in Communication. And a lot of incredible women in sports have, there was somebody writing for the Times sports page, and for ESPN. So they've gone on to, that's been going on for, about 7 or 8 years now. So those women have gone on to incredible jobs as well in sports media. So I am proud of what we've been able to, do from the foundation's work, from one charity golf tournament every year. And last year we honored Leslie Visser, by the way. You were there, remember, as our broadcasting legend. So I just, I feel it's very important to help young people and, to support people and not only financially, but also with advice. And, I'm here. I think I'm a pretty good source of knowledge and experience and wisdom. So I'm really open to, encouraging people and answering, questions and really helping guide people, based on what their dreams and goals are. So I'm available anytime to talk to anybody because that's what I love to do. I love to help people.
This is a particularly difficult time to get into sports media right now. What advice would you have for aspiring sports broadcasters out there looking for their first jobs in this time of a ton of uncertainty right now?
It is a tough time, because so many departments are cutting back. So many advertisers are kind of taking a wait and see approach to see what's going on with the pandemic. I just think, organize yourself, develop your skills, read everything you can read, be very, very knowledgeable, work on your writing skills, because no matter what you do, whether you're on air or a producer or in PR, whatever kind of sports media you do, you have to be a good writer. So work on your own, writing skills. Obviously, the more knowledgeable you are about digital platforms and the technology behind digital platforms, the better. If you can, work a camera, if you can edit, if you, can do a lot of things that back in the day, we never had to do all those production jobs. I certainly didn't have to, do hands-on editing. I edited on paper because I knew content-wise what I wanted to stay in the show or be edited out of the show, but I never had to actually edit it on in the studio. And now everybody's editing on the computers, right? On laptops. So you just have to have all your experiences and kind of organized, and then network. You'll find perhaps opportunities by, don't be afraid to ask, have informational interviews, set up informational interviews with people in the business, and by networking, you hopefully learn about opportunities that may be out there. So it's a combination of being ready when the opportunity comes and just really broadening your network.
There's a lot going on in our country right now, and without going too far into it, there's a lot of conversations about social justice. And so in addressing racial inequality, what more do you think needs to be done specifically in our industry, the world of sports media? Especially for broadcasters of color.
We need to, have opportunities equal for everybody. I think, I know in the golf business, all the organizations, the governing bodies put out statements that they want to continue to learn more and be sensitive to, what's happening, and to create more opportunities for people of color. And they have different programs in place, but we can all do better, right? So I just think it's going back to listening and understanding and taking the time to really understand what the issues are. And I also think, though, that we all are entitled to express ourselves. I think love and respect are the two key words here. Because I think if we love each other and if we respect each other, we'll be a much more tolerant world. And I think our world just I think we just have to love and respect each other more.
Thank you so much for being so generous with your time today and your continual mentorship and leadership, not only for myself, but just for women in our industry and just the role model that you are.
Kelly, I enjoyed every minute of it. I'm so proud of you and of the organization. And, thanks for having me on as your first guest. And stay well, stay safe, stay active, and stay peaceful.
Thank you. You can catch Ann's Talking Golf show every Sunday, 7 to 8 a.m. on WFAN.